Chapter 30. Austin was sleeping when I got there, and it took him a while to come around, but he looked much better. He spoke with effort. "Let's order a pizza. I could eat too, and we need lots of soda." I nearly burst into tears at the normalcy of that. He was still an awful combination of colors, but he seemed more like himself. His eye had opened enough to see green. He looked much better with both of his eyes. After I ordered the pizza, I sat on the edge of his bed. "Austin, is there any way another man could have hurt you? Gil says he hit you once, and that there was another man there." "That's right. Gil hit me once." Austin's words were strained, but he seemed to be thinking clearly. "When he left, the other man came up to me and said, 'She's mine, you can't have her.' I don't know what he meant." My cell phone rang. When I snapped it open, Sheriff Ben said, "Jimmy Joe is not here, but you should see his place. It's a shrine to Margarita Ricos. He has some of your things. There is a life-size photo of you running toward a mountain, and others. You would be horrified." "I am, Sheriff. I don't know what to say." "The man is more ill than we realized. I've got every deputy looking for him except you. Barney is keeping his eyes open down south. Were you able to get anything from Austin?" "Yes, he says Gil hit him once. When Gil left, another man came up to him. It was Jimmy Joe Blank, Sheriff." "Tell Austin not to worry. We'll find him." I related what I knew to Austin, who took it in stride. "I'm so sorry, Austin. The man had been bothering me, but I never had reason to think he would hurt you." Austin lifted one hand with difficulty and placed it on mine. "It isn't your fault. Stop now or I'll have to kick your ass." I laughed and lay down next to him. The man the cowboys called the retard said, "You think you control everything. Bulls and bull riders and rodeo cowboys and your friends." I stared at him, speechless. "Do you think you could control the weather too? Sometimes I don't like it." That made us laugh, although he was stopped abruptly by pain. "You expect sunny and 72 every day, don't you?" I said. "Yes, if you were any good at controlling it, that's how it'd be." I could see how he hurt. "Are the pain meds working?" I asked. "Do you need a stronger dose?" "Don't talk about pain. Talk about something else." "But Austin, I'm okay. Better. Talk about something else." "What did you do today while I was messing up the weather?" "I mostly slept. Sheriff Ben came by. I like him." "I like him too." "I hope they hurry up with that pizza." "I can't believe you want to eat pizza. Didn't they serve you dinner?" "Sure, but a man can't eat too much pizza," he said. "Why don't we watch an old cowboy movie?" I intended to watch the movie with him, but I was asleep before the pizza arrived, nestled safely against his warmth. Well, it felt safe then. During the night, I felt a sharp sting on my neck, the kind of quick jab a scorpion gives. I swiped at the imaginary creature and the room spun. Before I could say or do anything, I passed out. I awoke disoriented and nauseated, lying on my side facing a metal wall with my wrists tightly bound. My shoulders and arms ached. I didn't know where I was, but remembered the sudden sting and that I had been sleeping next to Austin. Then it came back to me in a jumble of vivid images, some comforting like Austin, but most of them frightening. The hospital gown had been replaced with black lace panties and bra, which meant that someone had undressed me and redressed me. I didn't think I'd been raped, but before my mind began conjuring all the horrible things that can be done to a woman, a metal door squealed open and footsteps came toward me. Jimmy Joe Blank stood over me. "I'm glad to see you're awake," he said, as if I was a willing houseguest and he my cordial host. Then he lifted me and set me on a straight-backed wooden chair. "What am I doing here, Jimmy Joe?" "I'm going to feed you some breakfast and we'll talk." I didn't complain because I'd missed lunch and dinner the day before. I needed strength and time to think about how to get away from this lunatic. I wasn't sure how to play the situation, so I kept my mouth shut and occupied myself by looking around the room. We were in a small barn-like structure made of metal and divided into a bedroom, kitchen, and living area by theme rather than walls. The theme in the bedroom was the same one as in his apartment. Margarita. I was everywhere. There was a poster made from a photo of me running in the shorts Poppy had said would bring me trouble. Jimmy Joe had been in Terlingua more than once and had watched and followed me and been through my things. It was past terrifying and made me afraid for my life. There was only one door I could see, and I prayed to get through it unharmed. The smell of bacon frying was torturous and made it difficult to concentrate. I wanted to berate Jimmy Joe and demand he untie me, but I was alone God knows where with a perp who had tried to beat a man to death. He was cruel and insane, and I kept reminding myself of that so I wouldn't run my big mouth. "I hope you like pancakes and bacon," he said, playing the gentleman. For all I knew, he thought he really was one. "I like them, but could you untie me, Jimmy Joe? I'm in a lot of pain." He set down the spatula he was holding and came to me and began rubbing my shoulders. I would have felt safer with a rattlesnake draped around my neck. "Please untie me, Jimmy Joe." "We haven't begun our lessons yet." "What lessons?" "I'm going to teach you how to treat a man who loves you." "If you love me, you won't hurt me," I said, as if sure of it. "I won't hurt you unless you force me to. I think these lessons might come hard for you, Margarita." "No shit." "I'll untie you when we eat," he promised. "I hope you won't try anything because I'll be forced to cause you pain if you do that." "I won't try anything unless I get half a chance." "I wish I could believe you, but unfortunately I don't. You've already demonstrated how hard-headed you can be." He caressed my face lovingly, but his reptile eyes held nothing like love. I tried to show no revulsion. "Everything is okay, my precious girl," he crooned. "I like a woman with spirit. You're sexy as hell." A bit later, when he was flipping pancakes, he said, "I think we'll be very happy together from here on out." I managed to stay quiet on the subject and wondered if anyone was looking for me and how they would find me, and if it would be too late when they did. If Sheriff Ben realized I was missing, he would search, and Barney. He'd come and kick ass if he could, and my Poppy was likely to bust down every door in Alpine looking for me. But I didn't even know if I was still in Alpine. My spirit sunk low, so low I was terrified I would cry in front of Jimmy Joe, and I didn't know how that would affect his behavior. I swallowed back hysteria. "I would like some clothes, Jimmy Joe," I said when he moved me to a small metal cafe-style table for two. "I can't eat like this." "Why not? You do it at home." That shut me up. Then he said, "Let me see what I have," as if he was a reasonable man, and went into the bedroom area. Out of a wooden trunk, he pulled some of my clothes, running shorts, a couple of t-shirts, a sheer violet teddy, and a lacy white negligee set Gavin. Then he said, "Let me see what I have," as if he was a reasonable man, and went into the bedroom area. Out of a wooden trunk, he pulled some of my clothes, running shorts, a couple of t-shirts, a sheer violet teddy, and a lacy white negligee set Kevin gave me. It was beautiful, and it infuriated me for Jimmy Joe Blanks to touch anything that came from my husband. How dare he take personal things of mine? But stealing was the least of his sins. He held each item up against himself as if to model it. He looked freaking ridiculous, and I wanted to tell him he turned my stomach and that I felt like killing him for what he did to Austin. But instead, I said, "I'd like to wear the shorts and a t-shirt, please." He brought the teddy instead. "I prefer this." I wanted to kick his teeth out and serve it to him on a plate. "That's for sleeping," he said. "But let me wear the shorts." Ugh. He held each item up against himself as if to model it. He looked freaking ridiculous, and I wanted to tell him he turned to my stomach and that I felt like killing him for what he did to Austin. But instead, I said, "I'd like to wear the shorts and a t-shirt, please." He brought the teddy instead. "I prefer this." I wanted to kick his teeth out and serve them to him on a plate. "That's for sleeping," I said. "Let me wear the shorts." "You sleep naked, I happen to know. This thing is for sex. We'll get to that later." I thought, over my dead body. But my next thought was that this adventure could end that way, and I didn't want it to. I had to keep myself alive. He finally brought me the shorts. Then he untied my wrists and let me dress, but he watched. Then he let me go into the bathroom while he guarded the door. I hoped for a window, but there wasn't one. There were only 2 windows in the whole place, and those held air conditioners. There was no way to see out of them, much less crawl through one of them. When we sat at the table, Jimmy Joe laid a firearm on the table next to his plate. It was a Beretta similar to mine. He said nothing and didn't need to. I understood the message. I ate in silence, listening to Jimmy Joe chatter as if we were a contented couple and one of us wasn't under house arrest. I was like a cat waiting in tall grass for a bird. If he moved from the table, I was going to spring for the Beretta and shoot him. I asked for more food and later more water, but for the express purpose of getting him to leave the pistol on the table. Great plan, but it didn't work. Suddenly he said, "I was trying to teach that retard a lesson about sleeping with my woman and he bit me." What the hell? "What do you mean?" "I tried to make him suck my dick, but the little fucker bit me." Way to go, Austin. "I think the goddamn bite is infected." "You should get medical help," I suggested sweetly. After eating, we sat in the living room. If he hadn't had the Beretta pointing at me, I would have kicked him hard in the crotch and taken it away. I waited for any chance to do that, but Jimmy Joe Blanks was as wary as he was demented. I sat on the sofa indicated and willed him to sit next to me, but that didn't work either. He began to talk about sex and what a great lover he was. I watched as impassively as I could, nearly biting through my lip to keep from commenting on his damaged equipment. I was cold with terror that he'd rape me with an assortment of unspeakable items. All attempts to rein in my imagination were futile. I tried to steer the conversation away from sex by asking where we were and how long we'd been here. I didn't see how we could just live in a metal building forever and wanted to feel for how far from reality Jimmy Joe had slipped. He gave me no clue except for his ramblings about sex and how much I'd enjoy it with him. That was pretty far from reality. A tiny glimmer of hope surfaced when Jimmy Joe tied me so he could go to the bathroom. He handcuffed my wrists and attached them to the bathroom door. Within seconds of entering, I heard him groan pitiably. That was where hope came in. I thought hard about kicking him with all my strength when he came out, but didn't know if that would be hard enough or what he would do to me later. Patience would be best. Just have patience. Jimmy Joe was in the bathroom a long time. When he came out, he looked pale and sweaty and was breathing heavily. I resisted the urge to speak. He unhooked me from the door and led me to the bedroom. "I need rest," he said, "and I want you with me." I lay down on the bed only because he insisted. I didn't want him to touch me or even to be in the same state with me. He removed the handcuffs and tied me to the bedpost using the violet teddy and a pair of lacy white bikini underpants that didn't look up for the job. I knew if he would go to sleep, I could free myself. My mind held to that happy thought while he touched my breasts. Mercifully for me, his pain was bad enough that his fondling didn't last long. Sweat stood on his forehead, even though the room felt cold enough to hang meat. "I need a doctor," he said after lying still a while. "I'm sick." Do you have a phone? I'll call EMS. Nice try. You said you needed a doctor. I wasn't talking to you. I didn't dare ask to whom he was speaking. I lay quietly, held captive by my own lingerie, and had an irrational urge to laugh hysterically. They never talked about anything like my predicament in the law enforcement academy. I wondered if any other deputies had been tied up with their underwear and then hoped that none of my colleagues would ever have to know anything about it. I could live down throwing up at a crime scene, but I thought I'd never live down lying in a bed with a man who had an infected bite on his penis while tied with my own intimate apparel. When I ventured to look at him after 10 minutes or so, I saw that my captor had closed his eyes. He held the Beretta in his hand against his chest. I could feel the heat coming from him and wondered what his temperature was, but on the other hand, didn't care if his brain boiled. When Jimmy Joe began to snore softly, I started working my right hand free of the wispy panties. To my surprise, they held on a long time before they began to give way. The lace made a tiny ripping sound, and each time it tore, I checked Jimmy Joe for reaction. He cried out once, nearly stopping my heart, but continued to sleep, and after a few more minutes, I pulled one hand free. I flexed it and then moved it slowly to the other one and undid the knotted teddy. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would wake Jimmy Joe as I lay still, trying to calm myself. I was terrified to rise from the bed and risk waking him, but I thought it was just as risky to try to grab the gun from a prone position. The barrel of it faced me when I raised myself onto one elbow. He was on my left, so I was raised on my left elbow, and since I'm left-handed, it made it all the more awkward. If I panicked him, he could put a bullet in my chest without aiming. Lying there passive, waiting for the lunatic to wake up wasn't an option, so inch by inch I moved myself to the floor. If he sighed or moved or cried out, I froze in place. I've never done anything that required so much patience. By the time I reached the floor, he was breathing deeply and steadily. My weight was off the bed, and he hadn't noticed. So if I was ever going to get my hands on his gun, now was the time. At a rate a crippled turtle could have beaten, I crawled around the bed. In one movement, I stood and grabbed. Jimmy Joe turned fitfully in his sleep, and my heart stopped. I didn't want to shoot a sick man lying down, but I was prepared to. In the process of removing the weapon, my fingers grazed his skin, and I realized how ill he was. His skin was hot, hotter than human skin should be. But I wasn't going to stand around wringing my hands over him. I began backing towards the door. It was locked by a serious contraption, similar to the kind used in a bank safe, and it required a combination. I wasn't going to be able to open it, and if I shot at it, the door wouldn't open, and I'd probably be killed by a ricochet. Disheartened, I began looking for a cell phone, or any phone. I found one, but wherever I was, there were no bars. Finally, I ran across Jimmy Joe's service radio, still hooked to uniform pants that were in a jumbled heap on the bathroom floor. It was sheer luck that he had failed to turn in the radio to the sheriff. I shut and locked the door, picked up the radio and said, "Sheriff Ben." It was going to be an entertaining day for the police scanner eavesdroppers. His response was nearly instant. "Margarita!" "I need help," I whispered, "but I don't know where I am." "I know where you are. Where's JJB?" "Sleeping. I have his weapon." "Will you be safe if I pull the door out?" "I might have to shoot the subject." "Do what you have to. I'm coming." When I came out of the bathroom, Jimmy Joe jumped me and drove a knife into my side before I could shoot him. It was a surprise attack from a man who should have been too ill to plan it, too ill to move. The Beretta skittered across the floor like a live thing. I believe Jimmy Joe would have picked it up and shot me if two things hadn't happened at once. The winch on Sheriff Ben's gigantic Ford truck pulled the door away from the structure holding it. There was an alarming amount of noise that I barely noted because of the fire searing in my side. The second thing that kept Jimmy Joe Blanks from killing me was that he passed out cold, or in his case, hot. The sheriff was suddenly beside me, his pistol drawn. "Don't move," he said to Jimmy Joe, but they were wasted words. There was a knife handle sticking out of me, and I could feel the warmth of my blood flowing around my fingers where I held my side. I'd had enough emergency medical training to know not to remove it, or I'd risk bleeding to death. I was leaning against the wall, and about the time my knees started to go, Sheriff Ben took hold of me. "The ambulance is right behind me," he said. "I was afraid he'd hurt you, so I asked them to follow." He was an amazing, larger-than-life superhero. I wanted to ask him how he knew where to find me, but right then it didn't matter. The point was that he had.